Hello and welcome to Talking Horses. Thank you for your patience. A little technical difficulty, so you won't see all the bells and whistles, but we're here, Maggie Wolfendale and Sarah L. Bodway, to take you through this final day of racing here at the Big A for this Belmont at the Big A meet. It will continue July 4th up in Saratoga.
Yeah, looking forward to spending that weekend up there, something that we haven't had the opportunity to experience before, and we'll see how much stamina we all have for the extended Saratoga meet, but at least the crowds, the energy, the quality of racing, it's all the best once we get up there.
Yes, absolutely. Really looking forward to it. And then the traditional meet kicks off the following week up at the spa. But we do have 9 races to take you through today. But first, the only way to play the races is with a Naira Bets account. And if you're not a member, become one today using that promo code BONUS200. And you can earn up to $200 when of your deposit match bonus. Just check out NairaBets.com. We also have a carryover in the pick 6 of just over 45,000, actually nearly 46,000. We'll begin in race number 4. We also have the 10K hit and split and the late pick 5 at Churchill and Monmouth. Make sure you opt in over at NairaBets.com. Also, the cross country pick 5 begins at Monmouth with their 4th race and will include 2 from here, the 5th and 6th, and 4, 5, 6 from the Jersey Shore. It begins at 2:20, and that means we have an early start and an early end on America's Day at the races, which will begin at 12:30 on FS1. Well, Sarah, will kick things off here with the first race, 1.125 miles on the inner turf course, and it's for the New York bred fillies and mares, and there's one with a pretty cool pedigree in here, actually, being a full sister to Voodoo Song. We'll start with the 2B, Just One More, who will return to Horacio de Paz and will get Lasix for the second start as a 4-year-old. And we'll go back and watch her last, sorry, we don't have videos.
We will not.
We will not.
But
just
you
kidding.
can.
I'm on
so accustomed to
autopilot
it.
here today. That's the technical difficulties. We cannot show any video. So anyway, let's talk about Just One More, Sarah. You know, going back to her last start here at Aqueduct, she was wired. The rails were way out that day. She attended the pace, but she was out wider. And I just thought that, you know, watching the flow of that race, you wanted to be inside.
And with her, that was her only time facing State Bred Company, and she did run well to finish 3rd in there against some older horses as well, taking that step forward from her first start to her second. And then, look, her Tampa race wasn't exactly confidence enthusing, but the pace of that race was fairly honest. She had an outside post. She was a little bit keyed up and kind of had an awkward start that I don't really think took anything away from her in terms of momentum.
Correct.
It just seemed a little uncomfortable in that
Right.
spot, trying to get over and save some ground at least early on in that race. So I don't want to hold that against her too much. Now she gets back in with her State Bred Company in here, and she kind of looks like the 2.0 Galabrand in a way, with all the white chrome on all of her legs.
I just hope she isn't like Galabrand. She is and she's only faced New York breds one other time in her career, though you're going to go to a horse that's only been on the turf one other time in her career, and that's number 3, Leonora's Secret. You know, the reason why I also like Just One More is the fact that she possesses speed, but Leonora's Secret could too, as she did in her second dirt start, and she has an advantageous post.
She does, and she's one that is getting back to the turf course, and I just think that with the general progression that we see from 2 to 3 that we can reliably predict most of the time, she's only had the one opportunity to be on the grass, as you said, but also go a route of ground, and then turf season's over. She stays in New York. Well, you get what you get in here, because she had to try those dirt sprints to see if she could stand up on that surface. Clearly she's a turf horse, even though she is by Bernardini, who's more of that dirt influence, but the dam side is very turfy, and so I'm just excited to see what she can do coming into a spot that she's already shown a little bit more ability on, and if she takes a step forward, she could be dangerous.
We virtually have the same 4 horses in the same order nearly as Sassetti. She is a second-time starter, though she holds that recency factor that the aforementioned 2 do not. I don't love the fact that she didn't have that much early speed. She got over to the rail, she moved in closer down the backside, and she continued a mild rally behind a much the best Mommy's Turn that day. Could she show more speed is my question, getting to her second start, in which, the pace was fairly honest in that debut.
And look, that's completely possible. I think the other one of that entry is a little bit more intriguing. The 1A, the first-time starter, who has some decent pedigree in terms of really taking to the turf. I have to a horse that was pretty successful on the grass and ultimately ended up in some stakes quality fields. But with her, I thought that she got a very good trip last time, the plain one, and you're just going to have those prices cut when you do have these coupled entries.
What did you think about Bryant and Cooper?
I think overbet based on the Chad Brown factor.
Blinkers on, getting Lasix. I will say that I like the blinkers on factor because
Seems necessary.
She just looked as though she was running in spots, just with that emergency brake on, as Richie Migliore likes to say. And I just think that if she's going to be any better, which she's going to have to be significantly better, I think now as a 3-year-old, those blinkers are going to help.
I think that this is one of those classic examples of a horse that will benefit from them, especially if she's able to show a little bit more forward position, but just absolutely no early speed in those first 2 starts. And maybe she's taken that step forward from 2 to 3 in terms of mental maturity and having a little bit more early speed. But for the price that I thought she would be based on connections, I went somewhere else.
Here he is, race number 2. It's the 2-year-olds on the turf course in an interesting condition. We had that restricted maiden special weight for those horses that sold or RNA'd for $60,000 or less. But also, we can include New York breds, which gives us a New York bred that sold for $130,000. That is Nashika on the rail for Mike Maker. And, she didn't work that fast, but she was a very efficient mover from what I observed. And 2, while it feels as though like none of these connections in here have particularly strong numbers with their 2-year-olds,
That's fair.
her pedigree felt as though it could be the one that is the most precocious.
In a way, I felt like this was the horse to beat. Based on
totally
the
agree.
sales work, the purchase price, and then that pedigree, as you mentioned, because the full siblings, they've been a lot more accomplished than the half siblings, so this is clearly a match that works better for this dam. Another full sibling, Kiss the Sky, only ran 3 times, but was second on dirt first time out, then won that 2-year-old maiden special weight at Saratoga, then actually was narrowly defeated by Tiz the Bomb at Kentucky Downs in his next start, who is your horse that is the official winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. Some fondly remember, some do not. But
I do remember
there is that precocity with this one, as well as the ability to handle the grass the first time out. So I just don't love the rail for 2-year-olds in general for their first race, but on the grass, I feel like it's a little different.
And, Twirling Candy hits at 17% with his 2-year-old debuters. But on the flip side, watching that workout, she just looked as though she might want to go a bit further. Another horse that we both used in here was the, it was the 8.
The only one with experience.
We're only one with experience that, potentially could be the one who leads the way. And as I always say, it's so much easier for horses to sustain their speed on the turf as opposed to the dirt.
And I also like that, the horse debuts first time, doesn't have that same early speed, figuring things out, and is able to come in for a spot to finish third in that race at Keeneland, which we saw be productive moving forwards, where we did see Cadabra and Gina B both regress slightly in terms of their Beyer speed figures, but run well in their next starts. And then it just seemed as though she was a little bit keen, a little bit up on the pace that ultimately we saw a very impressive debut runner from Todd Pletcher in that race.
Yeah,
she
just won with so much ease. Yeah.
And so I don't want to hold that race against her too much coming in here. I just think that while there's really not much going on in terms of pedigree with this horse, that experience edge is so valuable this time of year.
And 2, she's been working with Amelia Green's other horse in here, a first-time starter, who I ultimately put on top, in Devilish Grin. She too sold at the OBS April sale. She worked 10-2. She was asked a little bit. She definitely moves like a turf horse, but I actually like the breeze that she comes in here off of up at Saratoga, in which she ran with, or worked with, I should say, with Nacho Problem. And she was on the inside, and while Nacho Problem wasn't really asked at all, Devilish Grin was able to hold the advantage over her throughout the breeze. So I just like that. I like the pedigree. Although Daredevil, not necessarily a precocious type of sire, he is proficient with his turf sprinters. The Dam, she was a graded stakes winner on the turf, and a half sibling won a turf sprint. So I'll take that one. John Velasquez also gets the ride. Now you went to number 3, Great Actress in here, who's a daughter of Mendelssohn. She RNA'd for only $9,000, or she was bought in the.
She could have
backside of the
sold
ring.
for that price and then did
Yeah.
not because that wasn't enough to equate the value that they had set on her. And I'm going to end up relying on your assessment of her once you are actually down there looking at them in the flesh, because that's a big concern to only have not sold for that sale price with the work that she had, where I thought that it was extremely professional, where she was able to breeze
I
the
don't.
quarter. You don't?
Mm-mm.
I love that when they look to have the lead change, the rider just looks over and then she just changes immediately.
You're supposed to change when you're working a quarter. You're supposed to change as soon as you come off the turn.
But I like that she did it when the rider asked.
It wasn't that smooth.
No? Okay. Well, I mean, I'm curious to see what you think of her in the
She
flesh.
wanted to stay on that inside
Yeah.
lead. I don't know. We'll see. And
Yeah.
two, often when they work them a quarter as opposed to an eighth, it hints at the fact that they want to go longer.
Totally possible. And to be fair, there's nothing really going on with this pedigree at all.
No, that was my problem with
Which
it.
is why I could sort of equate the sales, non-sales price being what it was, and then instead of wondering what else is going on with this horse. Because sometimes it is a red flag and sometimes it's not. So it's just a hard thing to read. But I'm curious to see what you end up thinking of her. It's not exactly a trainer that's known to win early, especially with 2-year-old first-time starters. But as we touched on, nobody really is known for that in this spot.
Yeah. She was bought by this owner for $9,000. It's just she was bought in the outside the ring. She RNA'd in the ring. That's
Yeah.
why you don't see the sales price.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, there's an amazing pedigree with the 7 in here. Knowledge is good. I don't know. We don't know. We just don't have many stats on Nick's Go as of now. But the dam produced Saratoga Flash, who was a 7-time winner on the turf and earned nearly $500,000. The second dam, Missy's Mirage, it's a multiple graded stakes winning, albeit dirt sprinter.
And we haven't seen too many of the Knicks goes yet, but he does already have a turf sprint winner. So there is that.
That's his lone winner, the sprinting on the turf. As race 3, we see the return of, we have videos back. Well, Eddie,
Exciting
coming in,
news.
exciting stuff. So we can take a look at some of the replays. And as I was just about to mention, Tuscan Gold, he's back after his 4th place finish over a year ago behind Gate to Wire Preakness winner Seize the Gray. We'll take a look back here, Sarah, at his maiden breaking score. Now, he would follow it up with a very good effort in the Louisiana Derby.
He did. He was able to finish 3rd behind Catching Freedom and Honor Marie in there. He was the one that was trying to be closer to the pace that ultimately started coming apart for those 2 horses that have those late rallies and that finished ahead of him. I can forgive the Preakness. It's the Preakness at his first time over a wet track that really played well to forwardly placed horses, and that's exactly what Seize the Gray did. My problem with him a little bit is just that he hasn't shown much early speed, and
Yes.
he has one race that puts him as a standout.
Correct.
And there are other horses in here that might be a better price just because of connections, what races he's been in, who he has faced in the past, as well as that 195 Beyer speed figure, which I don't know that we're going to see again from him today.
I'll take the horse who, is likely to be the speed just given the draw, and that's number 3, Hop Sing in here, but I don't think he necessarily needs the lead. He was complimented when Stars and Stripes, who finished 3rd that day, came back and won with a blowout victory in an 87 Beyer. I just liked how game he is, and he's consistent. When it comes to speed figures, he's basically produced the same number besides that one muddy track race at Churchill. So I'm going to go with Hop Sing. You are going with the longest shot on the board here in number 2 for Zante.
I am, because I have a theory about how this race might play out tactically, which is probably an incorrect assessment, but if I'm
Always
right,
is. I try
no matter
so
which
hard.
way, it might
Yeah.
end up being incorrect. But I think that Hop Sing, yes, he's going to be forwardly placed in here. He draws inside of the horse that is stretching out in distance for the first time. We actually have half siblings in this race with Contrary Thinking and Tuscan Gold. Contrary Thinking being the older brother, being 5 and trying a little bit more ground for the first time.
Oh, that's crazy. I didn't even pick up on
Yeah,
that.
so I wonder if he's in this race to maybe add a little bit more pace into the race for a horse like Tuscan Gold, who seems to be one that needs a little bit of that pace to come to fruition. Chileno towards the outside, while he is cutting back slightly in distance, his last 3 races, he's been more forwardly placed and
Which
more
I like.
effective. And I think they've realized that that's kind of necessary for him to run his better races.
And he's been wired by horses in his last 2 efforts, and he finally gets back to a fast track today.
And goes the mile. And while I don't know where that 98 Beyer speed figure came from when he was able to win over lesser company.
But he's run close to that in the past.
He had. It just had been a little while. But with him, that's at the flat mile. That's what he gets today, third off the layoff. And so that leaves me to a horse that I think has been a bit compromised in his last couple of starts. In Frizzante, he comes out of a decent race where we saw Malarchuk end up being put up over Strategic Focus. I thought he was the only one to make up much meaningful ground in that race outside of what were better horses than he was. And I thought that the mile and an eighth maybe just a little bit further than his absolute best in here. I think that if there is that pace that somewhat materializes like I envision, which it's always a big question whether or not we will see it around here, he is the one that's going to be a similar running style to the horse that I think will be favored in Tuscan Gold and has at least faced some quality company, doesn't have to deal with the layoff, and perhaps was also against the track a little bit in that start, going all the way back to February when Heman Harkey gave Scat to Tap an excellent ride to finish second.
I will say this, though, the track was not very kind to horses trying to make up ground yesterday and the day before. That will be our first dirt race as we'll kick off the pick 6 here in race number 4. It is a optional allowance starter blah 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 type of race where there's a lot of conditions going on. It's going a mile in here, and you know, we saw a few defections, but kind of an evenly matched crew. I thought overall we both have landed on Mersal, who I just think gets back to reality here.
She's just been facing much better horses in those last 2 starts, and she came off a significant layoff 3 starts ago when she was able to win. I like that she was forwardly placed in there. I like that it was a confidence move to sort of use the waiver to keep her in the barn and then try some tougher company that she just wasn't really effective against. This field today just seems like the opportunity for her for sure.
It takes heart. Could likely be the speed as well, which could make her dangerous in this spot.
Yeah, I just sort of wonder if she's one of the ones that is taking that step back up in class versus some of these that are going down the class ladder.
Exactly, like Pistol is ablazing.
And I try to
it's
decide with
kind of been up
those.
and down, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it feels like Mersal is the true class of this field as she just gets back with her friends as race number 5, maiden 100,000, mile and a 16th here. We did see a few defections, including a first-time starter for Brad Cox. As, you know, Chad Brown, let's talk about the 2 Chad Brown horses in here for a moment because, oh, sorry, can't see. That's my problem. But the 2 horses from Chad Brown trying the turf for the first time, Hedge the Risk and Commander of Truth. There wasn't an abundance of pedigree, both being by constitution. I thought Hedge the Risk, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. He comes back as a gelding. I think both of them are suspect wagers.
And haven't they both are they the looks of horses that will just be bet just because
That's what I
Chad
mean,
Brown,
exactly.
first time on the turf, and Chad will experiment with different surfaces, especially if something's not quite working out as he originally thought it would. But don't you think that these were going to be excellent turf horses? They would have already gotten to the surface by now.
Okay, so why do you like Weekends and Whiskey trying the turf for the first time?
This one just has the 1 start and didn't do much running in there whatsoever, but was bet in that race, and so it's
850,000 yearling.
Probably a function of a horse going out for these connections with the purchase price, but there is more turf pedigree on the dam side for this horse. There's some versatility in the pedigree as well. He's a half to Dreamer's Disease who was good on both surfaces and actually placed in a couple of New York bred stakes. I know Stanhope doesn't have quite the same resume as that one, but he was a consistent figure on the turf on this circuit back in 2020 through 2022.
Did you watch his horse's breeze?
I did not, no.
I didn't like it at all.
You didn't? Okay.
He was working with a 2-year-old by the name Epic Desire, and he was moving well over it. Maybe he just, you know, maybe that 2-year-old's more of a sprinting fast type, and he's just a bit slower overall. But he was passed easily by the 2-year-old while under a ride.
Yeah. All right. Well,
on
I have
that
a
turf
stat
work
to counter
Okay.
for you. Todd Fletcher switching dirt to turf at Naira, 3-year-old and up maidens routing. 8 for 41 past 5 years, 20%, 41% in the money with a $2.33 ROI. And this is where he excels when switching horses to the turf versus doing it with 2-year-olds, doing it with horses that have already broken their maiden. I looked at a couple of different parameters for that stat, and this is where it was a good one.
massage it any way you want. I went with a
That's what we do here.
exactly. I went with a horse that is stretching out for the first time on the turf, and that's number 5, Blast Furnace, taking those blinkers off for Carrie Bryan. I just wanted somebody that was going to be forwardly placed in here, and like your horse could be forward as well. Weekends and Whiskey, but. I like Javier climbing aboard, and I just feel like this horse has had so many stops and starts and has been unable to get on his preferred surface many times. Now he's third off of a layoff. He's been one that's taken a while to get fit too. I just thought all of that added up for maybe him being able to steal the show on the front end. I do think number 2, Papa Golf, is the horse to beat. I have him second, you have him third. He just feels like a somewhat reliable type based upon his turf races.
He has arguably the most proven turf form going around of ground of this group, especially as of late where he was able to run third at Gulfstream. But he's also one that he was involved in some traffic and ended up being disqualified from second to fifth in a start back in February. And I just sort of wonder what is it going to take for him to get the win finally today, because he's starting to be that horse that gets bet and is running out of some chances.
Yes, as if Todd can't get him to win, in their first maybe 3, you start to wonder. As race, we'll actually take a break here and hear from our sponsors on Talking Horses. Eddie, do we have that?
I don't think we have a sponsor.
Horse racing? Check. Weekly promotions? Got 'em. Huge payouts? You bet. With Naira Bets. Download the app today and bet on any track, anywhere, anytime with live HD horse races, betting tips and tutorials, expert picks, and more. You bet with Naira Bets. Join now for a new member bonus at NairaBets.com.
That's right. Naira Bets brings you Talking Horses every day. Sarah and Maggie back with you. Race number 6 for this late pick 4. It is a allowance for the New York bred fillies and mares. 7 furlongs in here. And I don't know about you, Sarah, but I just opted and defaulted to the horses who have had less chances. And that is Straka, who I will give another shot to. She only has 1 race that makes her playable here, but the same kind of can be said, with Mitoli's Girl, but Mitoli's Girl's never been on a fast track before.
She hasn't, and she might do better on a wet track. That remains to be seen
Right.
today, so it is a question mark with her, but I like with this one at least. She's improved every single start. She has shown good early speed, and while she ran well to finish third in that last start from off the pace rather than going right to the front, that was a significant layoff, and looking at a horse that won that race like Embraceable Gal, she would be such a short price in this
100%.
field. So I just thought that with the outside post, the ability to show speed, second off a layoff, I just wanted a new face, kind of like you did, to a couple of horses that have had turns beating up on each other, and I just think that maybe this is a slightly tougher spot for them.
You don't like Straka, but I do like her here because she gets Lasix, and I feel as though that might be needed for her. Her last start was against much better horses, including Bernie and the Rose, who was just on that really good streak at that point in time in the year. And her best race, which was her victory, it was when Dave Duggan took her blinkers off, and I remember him saying he had high hopes for her throughout, and he just felt as though taking those blinkers off really kind of answered a lot of questions. So I'm hoping she can get back on track here, coming in off another bit of a layoff as race number 7, claiming 20 and 12 horses going postward to contest the 6.5 furlongs. Both you and I landed on a horse who
It will not be 20-1.
no, I mean, it'd be a joke if Thrill of It was 20-1. David Aragona not doing the line this week, but it's hard to come in and do a track. I couldn't make a line and do a track that you're not that, familiar with watching. As Thrill
I
of
would do
It.
a terrible job.
For John Terranova, I mean, there's just so much back class with this horse who, you could often say too, have they been running him too long since coming back here in 2025? I think that's a possibility over his head 100%. And 2, the turf experiment, the sloppy track, the Tampa dirt, who knows?
Looking at the past performances for him, it's just so many horses that are so much better than what he's going to be running into in this spot. And yes, it is an aggressive drop, but we're also heading into Saratoga, and I think everyone's just being realistic about where to put their horses because...
And it feels like John, who has had a slow 2025, is now being very realistic with his horses.
Yeah.
John Terranova is a good trainer, and I think he's just trying to get things back on track. And you just have to do that sometimes, and you have to drop your horses.
And cutting back on dirt, non-maidens, he is 7 for 27 over the past 5 years, 26%, 56% in the money with a $2.47 ROI. So this is a move that generally works well for him. Off the turf race, sloppy sealed track last time, facing much better company. I mean, he's just particularly obvious in this race as a horse that's getting that class relief and will appreciate a little bit less ground to work with.
We both have Lost in Rome in second. Just talk about such consistency for an 8-year-old. He literally just shows up and brings it. I mean, he doesn't always win, yes, I know, but he's a reclaim for Rob Atchison here. And last time, you know, he was closer to a pace that ultimately evaporated with Jackson Heights launching from way out of it.
Far back in there. And look, that was a decent field that he was running into because he had some trouble in the beginning of that race where he sort of caused it himself. But ultimately, it didn't do him any favors to sort of drift over and bump a couple of other horses and have to be taken back. So I thought that he ran well despite that to finish second in there. And he's just the one that I trust to show up the most.
Race 8, it is our feature. It is the John Hettinger. Now run at 6 furlongs, much like we saw that Ashley T. Cole yesterday. And Miguel Clement will send out 2 very short price horses, but it does feel like one of them is more suited to this race, and that is Loon Cry, who comes off of, I thought, a very good effort going the 5/8 at Pimlico for her first start back as a 5-year-old.
And we didn't see a ton of horses have success making up ground over that turf course that had taken a lot of rain in there. So I like that she was far back early and still at least able to get herself involved towards the later stages of that race.
Has Eddie given up showing videos? Is it not working again?
It might not be. Who knows?
I don't know.
It's
Nobody
a
tells me.
mystery. But look, she just has the class on this group relative to what she's going to be facing in here. She hasn't had as many opportunities as of late against the New York bred company. She's one that's been facing tougher out of town and just seems to be a very versatile type where she's not going to be up and on the pace, but she has at times shown that she could have a little bit more forward position if need be. I just couldn't see past her for a top pick.
We both had some interest in number 4, Sunday Girl, as yesterday's boy version of this lacked speed. Senbei got back to his old speedy ways. I thought Sunday Girl, I know sometimes it doesn't translate, but she just feels as though she could be loose in here, and there is enough turf pedigree to say that she should handle the surface change.
I think it's definitely not a negative having her come into this spot and try the surface for the first time. And it's also a good idea to just see what's available to her moving forwards in terms of possible starts. And if she has that versatility, it certainly opens up a lot of avenues for her. So she's an intriguing one. I know that you like her a little bit more than I do, but I think that...
Why do you like Silver Skillet?
I feel like she's had some trips that haven't necessarily worked out for her in terms of her compromising herself, and I like the cutback for her.
She does tend to get a little rank, which I think less distance always answers that.
And I think that she's also been dragged back further than she needs to be in situations where there's absolutely no pace on at all, like this race that we're taking a look at that was won by Spinning Colors, who was able to go the first quarter 25.
I agree with you, and I don't know why that consistently happens. It almost feels like she has such a light mouth, or she just kind of takes herself, she sucks back out of it.
Because she still runs a little bit, but it's not enough. And I think that she's not getting the trip that she would ultimately prefer the most. Who is going to really make up ground and close into the horse that gets to go 25 and 50 plus?
She's not the easiest horse to get along with, as both have a little bit, we don't have to show Solo Shot because we're vastly running out of time here, but both you and I have some interest in her, as her turf sprints have been pretty good.
They have. I wish her last 2 races were a little bit better, but maybe some excuses for that. Man, there are numbers that match up with what we saw from her last year.
All right, race number 9, the last one. I couldn't resist taking a horse coming in here for Robbie Bales, facing New York breds for the first time. That is El Delary. And just a winning type, 7 for 25 lifetime. What's happened?
I have no idea.
Are we still going out?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Well, I think the horse that you picked is probably the speed of the speed, right?
Yeah, I would think so. Eddie? Any?
Okay. Should we
Okay.
just finish this race and be done with, All right.
All right. Well, we'll just keep.
Eventful. The heat gets to everybody.
Yeah,
even the
welcome
TV truck.
welcome to the train wreck version of Talking Horses. Yeah, it's hot out. Trucks don't like that. Technology doesn't like the heat. We're back, race 9. As well, I did take El Delary, Speed of the Speed in here. Who do you like? You like Charles J, who I also think should run a lot better than he did. Not that he ran poorly last time. I thought he ran okay, just behind a really nice horse in Rhetorical.
Absolutely. And look, with him, I think that he took a while to break his maiden, yes, but
He took a
showed-
while to develop. The
Yeah.
physical maturation of this horse has been astonishing. Like,
Okay.
he's really gone, like,
Well, that's
boom.
more of an explanation that is a little bit more comforting, too, to think
Yeah.
that he's really taken that time to become who he is, because he has also improved and run consistently well against some decent company, even when he wasn't winning in those couple of starts. And so I thought that last time, just up against a very tough field, coming in off the layoff, first time as a 4-year-old, but still ran a number that was relative to the number he had run when breaking his maiden. And he's just the consistency, as well as the fact that I thought that maybe this pace could at least be somewhat honest, had me go with him on top over El Delary.
All right. Well, that's going to do it here for Talking Horses. We need to let Chris Griffin get to the reprise of Scratches and Changes. Eddie, should we just skip the slates? Yeah, we're just going to skip slates because I want to let Chris do his thing. So thank you for joining us on this edition of Talking Horses. For Sarah Albawi, I'm Maggie Wolfendale. Best of luck here the final day, this Belmont at the Big A Spring Summer Meeting.
Horse racing? Check. Weekly promotions? Got 'em. Huge payouts? You bet. With Naira Bets. Download the app today and bet on any track, anywhere, anytime with live HD horse races, betting tips and tutorials, expert picks, and more. You bet with Naira Bets. Join now for a new member bonus at NairaBets.com.
Thank you to Maggie Wolfendale, Sarah L. Bodway, and Talking Horses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Belmont at the Big A. At this time, we ask that you please rise, remove your caps as we honor America with the playing of the national anthem. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the New York Racing Association Live Racing Belmont at the Big A. A Sunday afternoon of great racing action ahead. 9 races on today's card. Take a look at the track conditions in just a moment, where the main track is fast and the turf is firm. 9 races this afternoon and a carryover in the Pick 6 with 9 races on the card. The Pick 6 starts in today's 4th race. $45,779 is that carryover. Starts in race 4, races 4 through 9 this afternoon. Here are today's scratches and changes. Main track is fast, turf is firm. Belmont at the Big A. Race 1, start of the early pick 5 is clear. No changes.